today we're going to talk about storms. Anybody excited about this past week with the storms? I know there were tornadoes in some areas. Does anybody like storms? My wife has like this sick obsession with thunder. But like if there's wind involved, she's like, nope, I'm done. I find storms just tremendously fascinating. Like, I feel like it's a Midwestern sport almost just to stand outside and go like, oh, where's the rain? Oh, look at the thunder. That's a big one. Wow. Yeah, well, I don't want to see a tornado. We could save that part of the extreme sports for somebody else. I remember this one time, I became particularly fascinated with rain when I was still playing a lot of soccer growing up. And it was in high school. We were about to have this game. And out in the distance, I see this massive dark cloud. And I've never seen this before until this point. But, like, you could see a wall of rain coming down. It was raining so hard, and you could see the rain coming at you. Like, it was beguiling how a whole wall of rain came. And as soon as it hit, you're just instantly drenched. You ever see that before? Yeah, I've seen that. Do you know what a derecho is? Anybody? They're these like little wind bombs. It's like total darkness. It's crazy. Like there's so many different kinds of storms that have come up in my life. Likewise, how many of you have been through a blizzard before? Driving through a blizzard, car shaking. You ever have that happen before? Any ever see lightning in a blizzard? It is weird. When you think of all these storms, while they are fascinating, they are also terrifying. You underestimate them, and you can easily end up in trouble, hurt, or sometimes even dead. Be unaware of them, and you can easily be caught unaware and unprepared. Obsess over them in an unhealthy way. You got like the tornado watchers who drive towards the tornadoes. Or you have those that are so fearful they will never leave their house. And you will live a life of fear, caught in paralysis. This kind of thing, when you take this symbolic element of a storm to how life works, when you hit these stressful points, when you hit these incredibly difficult points where you don't know how to move to the next point, or life is too difficult and you feel this tension where you don't know what to do. In that tension, often we experience this anxiety that is either all-consuming, or if you're able to move past that, you are able to divert to the next phase. But often we get caught in that all-consuming element. There was a story about a submarine when submarines were first being tested. And as part of the test, the submarine had to remain submerged beneath the ocean surface for a long period of time. While the submarine was submerged for its test, a powerful storm passed through the area, causing a great deal of damage. When the submarine returned to the harbor, the head of the team that was evaluating the submarine asked the captain, "How did the terrible storm affect you?" The captain looked at the man in surprise and exclaimed, "Storm? What storm?" The reason for the captain's surprise was that his submarine had been so far beneath the ocean's surface that it reached the area known to the sailors as the cushion of the sea. Although a storm's high winds may whip the surface of the huge waves, the waters in the cushion are not even stirred. So while vessels up above were being subjected to turmoil and damage, the submarine below was not affected. It remained safely in that cushion. When we experience storms in our life or anxiety in our life, often it creates this single-track mind of how do I handle this next phase of life. Perfect peace, though, will provide a cushion where anxiety will not rule you, and that calmness is found in Jesus. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep perfect peace." You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. Is that an easy mentality to follow, though? Because it's one thing to say, hey, I've got Jesus, so don't be anxious. Anybody think that's easy just to follow that off the get-go? Not easy. It is the simplest thing, but it is not the easiest thing. Because we have to have that deep steadfastness where we are trusting in what cushions us in Jesus Christ. But here's the tension. The tension comes from two areas where we get stuck the most: love and justice. Neither of which is wrong, but if you focus on one or the other, often when we get to these stress points or these difficult points in life, we err too much on one side or the other. Love in the sense that we are wanting what we have to stay the same, even if it's hurting ourselves, even if it's hurting those we love, or even if it's hurting somebody else. We want it to remain the same. Likewise with justice, if we err too hard on the side of justice to the point where love is gone, we end up doing damage to ourselves, to others, or anyone else around us. When we are practicing these things by ourselves, they tend to pull us apart, and we remain in that tension state or that anxious state. This is the imperfect side of us, how we end up being so broken. And this is where we need that perfect Savior who invites us to come to him, broken as we may be, but made whole in him. So the big idea that I'm focusing on today, as we look at 2 Samuel 18, is this. When love and justice pull us apart, a disciple surrenders to God's heart. It's kind of poetic. You want to say it with me? When love and justice pull us apart, a disciple surrenders to God's heart. I realized it sounded kind of Dr. Seussy. So, to give you a review of how we got here, David commits adultery and murder back in 2 Samuel 11. As atrocious as the deed is, David hides it for a long period of time. He thinks he gets away with it until he's confronted and he's shown how bad this is, how it has affected not only himself, but his family and the whole nation. He has left multiple sons and multiple people in his family unchecked for long periods of time as they watch his behavior. In the process, his oldest son commits his father's sexual sin and ends up raping his daughter. Whereas Absalom, his third son, kills the first son, committing David's murderous sin. They're watching father, and father does not discipline the son. Absalom is brought back and reconciled without even addressing the sin. The tension is still remaining. Justice is not done, even if love is practiced. Absalom plots against David for 4 years, still seeking that sense of justice because he feels wronged. He feels that he would be the better king. So he usurps David's place as king, leading Israel to reject God's anointed and ultimately rejecting God. Absalom takes the throne for a short period of time while David flees and plans ahead. He runs very far away, 20 miles towards the river and 20 miles up north to Mahanaim. Absalom rejects sound advice for the place of his own pride, where he would seem as if he is the military hero, as we saw last week. Ultimately, as we'll see today, leading to his downfall. So in 2 Samuel 18, starting in verse 1, David now musters the men who were with him and appointed generals and captains to lead them. He sent the troops out in 3 groups, placing one group under Joab, one under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and one under Ittai, the man from Gath. The king told his troops, "I'm going out with you." But his men objected strongly. "You must not go," they urged. "If we have to turn and run, and even if half of us die, it will not make a single difference to Absalom's troops. They will be looking only for you. You are worth 10,000 of us, and it is better that you stay here in the town and send help if we need it." So what we see first is David is surrounded by people who have been tremendously loyal to him. He starts with a small band of people. When he gets to Mahanaim, it's likely that he is surrounded by about 10,000 people who are ready and willing to go to war, to reclaim the throne that was lost, to battle against an enemy, namely his own son, Absalom, who is seeking the death of his father. He sends Joab, who has been loyal but kind of shifty. He still wants his own way. He's been shifty in a way where he's killed fellow commanders. He's plotted in unique ways to undermine David, but also elevate him at the same time. He is running his own kind of course in his head of what he thinks justice is. Abishai, he is considered one of the greatest warriors amongst David's men, killing 300 people with his own spear, as is recorded. He is this mighty man, but he is also a brazen man. At any point where the king seems offended, he's immediately saying, cut off the head of the enemy. He is a very bold individual. Ittai is a foreigner, formerly an enemy from the town of Gath, coming to David's side, particularly when loyalty was most tested. David is surrounded by these three who are to lead 10,000 out. He has great people around him, and he's ready to go with them, but they object strongly. Why? Anyone want to guess how old David is at this point? Probably in his late 60s, probably 70s. Yet he's ready to go to war. What's the problem with the king going to war, though? When only one is wanted to be dead. It's like when you play chess and you push the king out to the center of the board. Is that wise? No. And I believe his men recognize this. They recognize that only David is wanted. He's worth 10,000. And they would rather him stay and be ready to send out more people if needed. So he has these loyal people around him, and he understands that this is possibly the best plan. He says in verse 4, if you think this is the best plan, I'll do it. The king answered. He stood alongside the gate of the town as all the troops marched out in groups of hundreds and of thousands. And the king gave this command to Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, for my sake, deal gently with the young Absalom. And all the troops heard the king give the order to his commanders. So what we see here, I'm going to heavily emphasize this idea. This tension is kind of like a crown of anxiety. Anybody like having anxiety in their life? The thing is, with anxiety, we often can't get rid of it. So because we can't get rid of it, we wear it. And David's anxiety in this point is saying, I want my son who wants me dead safe. Is that wrong? Is it wrong for a parent to want their child to be safe? Even if they do something so tremendously wrong, damaging the family and damaging everyone around them, is it wrong to want their child safe? This is the sense where love is so immense, but justice is missing. It's not that Absalom has to die in this moment. It's that love is erring on so much on one side that David cannot focus his mind on the right stuff anymore. But even still, this command is given by the king. All troops, all 10,000 hear this command. There is no confusion. And they go out with these marching orders. Win the day, but also win my son back to me. So they go out to battle in the forest of Ephraim. And the Israelite troops were beaten back, this is Absalom's side, by David's men. And there was a great slaughter that day, and 20,000 men laid down their lives. The battle raged all across the countryside, and more men died because of the forest than were killed by the sword. So it starts in this open field, and it's pushed into the forest as all sides have merged and pushed into dangerous terrain. My wife and I visited this battle site down in Tennessee, the Battle of Fredericksburg during the Civil War. Anybody familiar with Civil War history? I am very minimal there, but I was able to visit the site, and they explained in detail how within the first 5 hours of this battle, the Union troops were so unprepared going into this battle. They enter this forest, and 5,000 were killed within the first couple hours. Because of the forest, because of the rocky cracks, because of the trees, because of the dips, because of the turns. Nature's not friendly, friends, especially when you're moving in big groups and fighting. Ultimately, by the end of the Civil War battle, this area was called the slaughter pen. because of the terrain. 12,000 died by the end of the day because of the terrain and because of the unpreparedness. Absalom's men were not prepared for this either. As they go into the forest of Ephraim, they are dying to trees, they are dying to falls, they are dying to massive rocks, they are dying to dips and turns. 20,000 men die because of this. It seems like this is, potentially great for David's men, but this is what is known as a tragic victory. When your own people that are fighting amongst one another start to die, the justice that is being done is not good in the long run, because you're only hurting one another. During the battle, though, we get to see one of the effects of the forest. Absalom, the king that is going into the forest, David's back in the city, he's safe. The king should not be in the middle of battle. Absalom, though, he happened to come upon David's men while they're in this forest. He tried to escape on his mule, but as he rode beneath the thick branches of a great tree, his hair, which is literally in Hebrew, his neck, gets caught in a tree. Which his hair, as long as it is, weighing about 5 pounds by the end of the year, gets caught in the branches. This man is stuck. His mule kept going and left him dangling in the air. One of David's men saw what had happened and told Joab, "I saw Absalom dangling from a great tree." Joab says, "What? You saw him there and you didn't kill him? I would have rewarded you with 10 pieces of silver and a hero's belt." Today's equivalent, that's about $20,000 in purchasing power. And this would have been an instant promotion. So it's lucrative. Verse 12, this unnamed man says, "I would not kill the king's son for even 1,000 pieces of silver." The man replied to Joab, "We all heard the king say to you, Abishai and Ittai, for my sake, please spare young Absalom. And if I had betrayed the king by killing his son, and the king would have certainly found out who did it, you yourself would be the first to abandon me." That's pretty harsh, isn't it? It says a lot about Joab's character. Joab is desiring justice. Joab is trying to kill all threats that would threaten the king, that would threaten his position, that would ultimately threaten the kingdom as a whole. And this would seem right, according to Joab. But what this unnamed man, and still remains unnamed to this day, we have no idea who he is, except that he was there and he was faithful to the king's command. He had a different kind of fear because he understood that news would get back to David. I think this parallels Matthew 10:28, which says, "Don't be afraid of those who want to kill your body. They cannot touch your soul. Fear only God, who can destroy both soul and body in hell." What does that mean? It means that often we get so afraid of the things around us. Often we get so caught up with the anxious thoughts that we have, or the people who may judge us or persecute us in a unique way because of following faithfully. The call in this passage in Matthew is saying, do not be afraid of those things. The fear should be directed at the one who sees all. You're not going to hide those things from God. You can clean yourself up amongst the people who may have an immediate effect on you, but you should focus on what has an eternal effect. But Joab is not listening to this. He says, enough of this nonsense. It's actually a little bit more harsh in the Hebrew. He essentially is saying, you are a worthless waste of time. I don't need your loyalty. I want my way. So Joab, probably walking over to the position where Absalom is still dangling from the tree, takes 3 daggers and plunges it into Absalom's heart. Or it's saying the middle, because he remains alive for just a moment. He's alive in this great tree, and then surrounded by 10 of the young armor bearers of Joab. They surround Absalom and they killed him. You have the unnamed man who remains loyal to the king, but then you have 10 opportunistic men who reject the king's edict. It's easy to take advantage of a small moment of glory and fame. And this is what these 10 men do to follow Joab's form of justice. Then Joab blew the ram's horn, and his men returned from chasing the army of Israel. This would mean the battle is completely done. This means the king is dead. Go home, other army. You've lost. They threw Absalom's body into a deep pit in the forest, and they piled a great heap of stones over it. And all of Israel fled to their homes. This is a very unceremonious ending for Absalom. Imagine this great man coming in on his father's mule into the forest, thinking that he's going to win the day and be the hero, gets caught in a tree, dangling, and then meets the man who brought him home from exile, who later he torched the field of in order to get his attention. Is this revenge of Joab for burning his field? Maybe. Is this revenge that Absalom has caused this usurping movement? Maybe. Joab doesn't like Absalom anymore because he's a threat. So Absalom is killed, thrown over a cliff, and then rocks are thrown over the cliff to an unceremonious grave. And you compare that to this. During his lifetime, Absalom had built a monument to himself in the King's Valley. Ironic, because this valley is where 9 kings back in Genesis fought one another and died again due to the terrain, due to falling in tar pits, and due to falling in just a mess of stuff. This was a tragic scene in the King's Valley, and yet Absalom is seeking to redefine it, saying, I'm something great. I have no son to carry on my name, but I want to be remembered. And guess what? This monument still stands to this day. That crypt or the tomb right there still stands. I believe I saw that while I was in Israel a handful of years ago. People still see that, but they don't remember Absalom for how great he is, do they? They remember him for how he was a fool, a thief, a rapist, a murderer, a rebel. He named this monument after himself and is known, again, as Absalom's monument to this day. I think we're all trying to find some way to mark ourselves in life. The question is, what kind of legacy do you actually want to have? What do you want people to remember you for? Absalom, in his sense of justice, in his sense of love of himself, tried to have people remember him for how great he was. But he did all of this apart from God. And this is his ending. We go on. In 2 Samuel 18:19. Then Zadok's son Ahimaaz said, let me run to the king with the good news, that the Lord has rescued him from his enemies. Now, just to give you an image of what this looks like, Ahimaaz goes to Joab. He's not called by Joab, as he'll say pretty shortly. He goes to and says, man, I'm so excited. I want to tell the king this good news. He was the former informant of all the plans of Absalom beforehand. He wants to be the bearer of good news now. He's bearing this great smile. He's excited. He's happy about this great victory. And I thought of this idea from this game I played a handful of years ago. It's going to be ultra obscure. I apologize. It's called I Want to Be the Guy, the Movie, the Game. It's a goofy game. But essentially, this small boy is just wearing this big smile, and he has to go through all these like platform jumps, and there's all these spikes and unfair moments. You can't expect a lot of the stuff that's happening. And it's just, like, as I played it, I kept questioning, why am I playing this? It's hard. It's annoying. I don't want to play this anymore. I don't know why I kept playing it. I eventually stopped and I watched other people play it for me. But this is what Joab sees. What he says is, no, it wouldn't be good news to the king that his son is dead. You could be my messenger another time, but not today. He's not saying to Ahimaaz that your news is bad. He's not saying that you're a bad messenger even. He's saying that your news right now is not going to be received, so doing this would be useless. It's not going to be received as good news. You're only going to give him a deepening sense of bad news. Joab then turned to another man from Ethiopia and said, "Go tell the king what you have seen." He turns to an eyewitness and says this. And the man immediately bowed and ran off. But Ahimaaz continued to plead with Joab and says, "Whatever happens, please let me go too." Joab says, "Why should you go, my son? There will be no reward for your news." It's like going through this platform game. It's like, why am I playing this? Why would you want to do this, Ahimaaz? And all he says is, "Yes, but let me go anyway." He begged. He was enthusiastic. He had a love for the king. He had a love that justice was done. This is where we get so far ahead of ourselves where we don't understand the implication of what we're doing, but we want to do something great. Joab eventually says, "All right, go ahead." Maybe he's like, fine, whatever, just get out of my face. You're getting annoying. So Ahimaaz took the less demanding route by the way of the plain and ran to Mahanaim ahead of the Ethiopian. This man, I am assuming, has probably about a 10-minute head start. And they're traveling about 20, 30 miles back to Mahanaim. While David was sitting between the inner and the outer gates of the town, the watchman climbed the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked, he saw a lone man running toward them. He shouted the news down to David, and the king replied, "If he's alone, he has news." "What kind of news?" "Unsure." As the messenger came closer, the watchman saw another man running toward them. He shouted, "Here comes another one." The king replied, "He also will have news," because they're alone. Verse 27, the first man runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok. I always find these kind of mentions or these details kind of funny. What does it mean to run like Ahimaaz? You ever watch how people run before? I used to run kind of funny. You learn how to control your movements in a proper way, but I imagine Ahimaaz as goofy and as excited as he is, he's not thinking about how he's running, and people recognize him for how he's running. So the watchman says, "We see Ahimaaz." And David says, "He's a good man. He comes with good news." And this is where the tension starts to build. Ahimaaz is coming with this completed sense of justice, but David, he's looking at something else. He's looking for a different kind of peace. Verse 28, Ahimaaz cries out to the king. He yells from the center of the gate, "Everything is all right," or literally is just one word, peace. Imagine coming into somebody's house and yelling, "It's all great." That's what Ahimaaz is doing here. He bows to the king with his face to the ground and says, "Praise to the Lord your God, who has handed over the rebels who dared to stand against my lord the king." This is the good news that he shares. This is the gospel message that he's sharing in the moment. Gospel and good news are the same word here. He's thinking he's sharing a sense of victory, but the king throws a twist. He says, "What about young Absalom?" The king demanded, "Is he all right?" Or the phrase in Hebrew is peace with him. He's not concerned with the peace that's coming from the war. He's concerned about the peace of his son. Throw out all the rest, because my vision is focused only on my rebellious son. Ahimaaz, likely in the confusion of this moment, says, "When Joab told me to come," did Joab tell him to come? When Joab told me to come, there was a lot of commotion but I didn't know what was happening. It's a quick lie to get out of a tense situation. So the king says, "Wait here," or "Get out of the way. Your news is not helpful to me." So Ahimaaz steps aside. Then the man from Ethiopia arrived and said, I have good news for my lord the king. Today the Lord has rescued you. He uses justice language of he vindicated you from all those who rebelled against you. David replies again, what about the young Absalom? Is he all right, or is peace with him? The Ethiopian craftily replies, may all your enemies, my lord the king, both now and in the future, share the fate of that young man. Wow. The king was overcome with emotion. He went up to the room above the gateway and burst into tears. The Hebrew is literally that he trembled. He froze and he trembled. And he didn't know how to process that information, because love was lost in this moment. His desire, his form of justice was lost in this moment. And he cries aloud, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son. It's very backwards. He would have been killed in the city. He could have stayed in the city if that was his desire, but he fled to protect the city, to protect his people, and to protect his mission that he had from the Lord. And then he became so entrenched with an anxious thought of, how do I get my son back? That he started missing the forest from the trees. Is David justified to react this way when it comes to the loss of his son? Yeah. In the sense of grief. But is it right that he's trading the victory for this single moment, diminishing all the rest of the victory and the goodness of what the people have done for him to win back the day, to win back the kingdom? Is his grieving right in response to the victory won? How can this be dangerous if David stays here? If he stays locked in this grief? Because what we'll see in the next couple verses in chapter 19 is all the people were influenced by David's grief. The victory that had been won this day was traded for grieving. I lost it. There we go. I think this parallels well to what we see on the cross. Romans 3:25 through 26. For God presented Jesus as the sacrifice for sin. People are made right with God when they believe that Jesus sacrificed his life, shedding his blood. The sacrifice shows that God was being fair when he held back and did not punish those who sinned in past times. For he was looking ahead and including them in what he would do in this present time. God did this to demonstrate his righteousness, for he himself is fair and just. He makes sinners right in his sight when they believe in Jesus. What does that mean? We see this grieving on the cross first. Why did Jesus have to die there? We rewind all the way back to when Adam and Eve first rejected God and said, I want my way. God's holding out on me. I want to be God instead. And that theme has stuck through the course of history up to this day, and it will continue to the end of time until Jesus returns again, when people will say, I want my way. I want to wear the crown. I don't care if it's a crown of anxiety. I don't care if it's a crown of justice. I don't care if it's a crown of love. It's my way. And this grieves the heart of God when we try to hold this crown. The right act of justice would be to be totally banished from God's presence. But God still says, I love you and I have a plan for you. I love you and I'm going to make this right. I'm going to take the place that you deserve. Dying on the cross was dying with every thought and every word and every action that is ever committed against God. Every sin that has ever been made, punishment was put on that cross in your place. Justice was done. Love was shown. but it was a unique sense where both were done perfectly in this moment to bring you into a right standing with God. So let's revisit this just for a moment. Often there are so many different storms in our life. We get so caught up with the things in our life that are too much for us. The goal that we have is that we want that sense of perfect peace, as Isaiah 26:3 says. And that is through steadfastness when you trust in the Lord. The problem that we often have is that we try to handle each crisis alone, each stress alone, and scaling too far on either the side of love, where we're trying to hang on to what may be hurting us, or too much on the side of justice, where we want it our way, even at the expense of somebody else. This is what does damage to ourselves. This is what does damage to the world around us. This is what we see in the news all the time. This is why things are bad, when we try to go our own way. The solution is to wait on the Lord and to surrender to God's heart. I'll have Ignite come up at this time. Jesus is calling us to something different. In the Beatitudes, at the beginning of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he says, God bless those who are poor and realize their need of him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way. Any of these points in any of these verses that Jesus proclaims are hard because they fly in the face of what's normal, of any of the storms in life, or any of the anxiety in life, because they reorient our focus on following Christ first. So the big idea is this. When love and justice pull us apart, a disciple surrenders to God's heart, with the bottom line being that our greatest problems often stem from either a desire for love or a desire for justice. When one outweighs the others, there is distortion. The dangers that you see with Absalom, he goes his own way. He does things apart from God. With Ahimaaz, he's trying to do things ahead of what his capabilities are. He's doing things for God. David and Joab, they're leaning too much only into love or only into justice. David is so focused on trying to get back his rebellious son that he doesn't see the need for discipline. Joab is so focused on trying to secure his position that he's willing to kill and disobey the order from the king. The best place to be is like this unnamed soldier. You won't get credit for doing the right thing often. You're not going to be in the news often because you did the right thing. You don't hear about people who are faithful in the news. How many of you hear good stories like that in the news? No. But this unnamed soldier, his call is to stay in the cushion of the loyal faith in the king. We may not understand the means or the method, but God's way is always best. So an inventory check for you is this. Where are you at right now? Where are you experiencing tension in your life right now? Are you leaning too much on the need for love or the need for justice? What I'd like you to imagine is this. If you give that tension of anxiety, if you give that crown of anxiety to Jesus today, what would that change about your situation? How would the trajectory of your life look if you were to give that up? As we go into our last song, I'd love it if you think about this. Carry it with you. Share it with somebody else. Trusted family member or a friend. Don't let it sit.